Welcome! Here's your bubbly and beautiful host, Elizabeth. It's the Caffeinated Cooper Show!
Yeah, I believe I don't believe in lucky seconds. I'm not sure about Loch Ness, but I know I believe in angels. I believe in happiness.
We all believe in happiness, don't we? At least at this show, we absolutely believe in happiness. And I am super excited to have a really dynamic fellow, I love that word, don't you? We don't use it as often as we should, connected to the show. But first, I'd like to say a shout out and a thank you to our sponsor this morning. And our sponsor is Honey Stinger. Honey Stinger. So I grew up in Metuchen, New Jersey. And I cannot tell you how hard that word, Stinger, it is to say. I have to go through sort of like a My Fair Lady process in my head because, I grew up in New Jersey and then my parents retired in Western North Carolina. So, whoa, culture shock. And it's quite interesting. You cannot sound like a Jersey girl in Western North Carolina. You just can't. And I love my North Carolinians. They're wonderful people. But Honey Stinger instead of Honey Stinga. They're a great company. They have been blessing me with so many really great products. I haven't been weightlifting and working out in the gym for hours, long durations and things like that, but recently. But when I was using this product, and this one's really interesting. They gave me a great interview to tell me about the backstory of the company, and this was developed in mind for cyclists because you could put it into that back pocket, rip this off, obviously with your teeth, and it is a honey. This has some caffeine. Some of their products don't have caffeine, but this is an organic wildflower honey. It's a product of Brazil, and it is produced by Honey Stinger. And if you're just watching the show, that is spelled HoneyStinger.com. And they have a special right now, as a lot of these companies do. So make sure that you check out all the sponsor websites because they are offering 15% off today of your very first order. And I just looked down at my notes here. I have all these wonderful things written down because they have some new 2022 flavors. So they also came out after the gel. They have developed these stroop waffles, and they're protein stroop waffles, of course, incorporated with their wonderful Brazilian honey that they have. But the gels come in a strawberry kiwi, a chocolate gel. They have 32 milligrams of caffeine, so that's about a half of a cup. Also, the caffeine is sourced from green tea extract. There's ginseng, 32 milligrams of caffeine is in the ginseng gel, and that caffeine is sourced from the cola nut extract. So the 2022 flavors, now it was a stroop waffle flavor that I wrote down. They have cookies and cream. They also have a chocolate. They have, like a vanilla. Oh my gosh, they're so good. They're gluten-free, natural flavors. They have rapid hydration as well. They've entered into that portion of the market. So for 2022, they have a mango melon water, which is rapid hydration with 50 milligrams of caffeine. It's absolutely phenomenal. And what I love about these companies is watching them grow. And so years ago, when they came on as a sponsor, you could really only get them on Amazon and honeystinger.com. Well, you still can get them at those two places, but they have expanded and they're now in Walmart, the Vitamin Shop, REI, Kroger, and Target. So if you're here in the United States, you can get them like everywhere. And I really implore that you do try the Honey Stinger products because they are really interesting and they're great tasting. So that is all the information I have to share with you this morning about Honey Stinger and what I actually have here in the studio and I do use on a regular basis. Really yummy. All right, let's talk about the fellow of the hour. It is Daniel Reyes. He is a very, very inspiring man. He really is. You're going to have so much of a takeaway from this interview. So he's the founder of something called Fasting Dice. It helped him lose, are you ready? 170 pounds in 10 months. Daniel stepped in and saved his own young life and has a profound podcast that may be found on his website. The website is www.fastingdice.com. That's FASTINGDICE.com. He speaks about, and I quote, the mindset for weight loss and many other topics. Daniel has a wonderful quote on his website that reads, I tried everything, including looking into weight loss surgery. The clinic said I would be lucky if I lost 100 pounds in 1 year. I've lost more than that in less time without fear of changing my insides of my body thanks to fasting dice. And without any further ado, I'd like to bring to the program Mr. Daniel Reyes, which is the founder of Fasting Dice. Good morning. How are you?
Hey, good morning. Thanks for having me.
Of course, I am so
Yeah.
excited to find you. I believe one of my assistants was having a conversation with you early on,
hmm
and they said, "Oh, I've got this really cool guy. His name is Daniel." And I said, "Okay, well, tell me about him." And you have a really powerful one sheet to where you are so authentic and so transparent with where you were.
hmm
And I would love for you to take me back to that point. Where exactly were you mentally, physically, spiritually in realizing that, okay, I've got to do something here?
Yeah. Yeah. So I've struggled with weight my whole life, right? But 4.5 years ago, it really came to a head, and I ended up going to the hospital because I had gained a bunch of weight, but more than that, my lips started turning blue,
Ooh.
and yeah, it was pretty bad. For a month before, I couldn't sleep laying down. I had to sleep sitting up. Um, just it was bad, 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 and I couldn't walk more than a few steps without being out of breath completely. No, typical guy was in denial about it. Like, oh, I'm fine. It's a bad cold. I'll get over this. And yeah, that it wasn't that. It ended up. It was a whole train car full of problems.
Mm.
I had bronchitis. I was born with a heart condition. But the big thing was I had multiple blood clots in my lungs and in my right leg.
Oh,
So, what I was told later is that one blood clot in your lung is a 20% chance of survival. And I, again, had multiple. So,
uh,
yeah.
that's scary. I mean, I was about to say mind blowing. No, it's not mind blowing. That is really scary.
Yeah.
What happened next?
So, I walked into the hospital about 11 o'clock in the morning. And by 5:30, I was having emergency surgery. They put a tube into my neck, like right around here. Kind of looked like a vampire bite, two little holes,
Mhm.
and it was two little tubes that went into my lungs and essentially pumped medication to bust up the clots, and that had to be in there for 24 hours. And and then we basically hoped and prayed. I remember when they first told me about surgery and that I would need to have this. I asked, "Well, what are my chances? What are the risks here?" And they said, "Well, we honestly don't know. We don't know if it's super risky or if you'll be okay, but we know if you don't do this, you're not going to be okay."
Wow.
Yeah, and so I did it, and I spent the first night in the ICU. Um, I was pretty groggy that first 24 hours right after the surgery, so a lot of it is blur. But
Yeah.
I do remember waking up and they're saying, "Okay, it's time to remove the hose," and I totally thought, "Oh, they're gonna knock me out and remove this thing," and literally the nurse walks up and rips it out, and like I felt it coming up. Yeah, that was the phase.
Oh.
Yeah. Uh, I tell my friends as a joke, I totally now understand what it's like to check the oil in your car. It's a long too.
Well, at least you have a good sense of humor about it.
I mean, there's that old saying: if you don't laugh, you cry.
Yeah.
So, yeah.
Yeah, no, truly. So, may I ask, how old were you? Because you look like a really young guy. So, how old were you at that point?
I guess that's good genetics. I was in my mid 30s. I'm early
Okay.
40s now, and yeah, it was pretty crazy. I ended up, um, so I was in the hospital for a month, out for a month, and then back in for another month. So that first stay, 3 weeks of that, I was in what they call an end of life room. I'm sure they're called other things in other hospitals. I've heard them called hospice rooms,
Hmm.
but here, end of life room. They didn't tell me that when I first got into it. They just said they had a really nice room for me that was maybe 3 or 4 times the size of a regular hospital room with tons of couches and chairs because everyone's there to say goodbye. That's why it's so nice. And there's ton of space for all the equipment because they expect they're going to need a lot of equipment to keep you alive as long as they can, comfortable. So, yeah.
What in the world? So, what was your challenge at that moment for why they would put you into an end of life room?
Well, I didn't know. I didn't know until towards the end of it, and they told me, "Okay, we're gonna move you to a regular room." And I was like, "Well, I thought you said I had a nice room. What's going on?" And they're like, "Oh no, no, you're better now. We're gonna put you in. You're
Oh, wow.
healthier. You're not, cured, but you're healthier. So we can do less monitoring." I was like, "Wait, what?"
Wow. And that's when you realized where you
That's
were.
when I found out that I was in and out of life room. Like the night before is when they told me.
So, did your family like come and visit you in this
Oh
nice?
yeah, but nobody told me.
And
I
did
guess
they
they had
know?
been advised don't tell him that he's in an end of life room because I guess like people get depressed and then they're just gone.
Okay. All right. I could see that thought process
I can
going
see it
too.
too. Yeah.
But I'm more like, if I'm dying, somebody like knock on the door and tell me. Maybe there's a
Right.
couple of prayers I want to say, a few letters I want to write. Oh my gosh. Okay,
I
so
do remember the chaplain popped in a lot and I wondered why.
I would totally be you. I would not get it. I would not be putting that together. Plus, also you're struggling. I mean, you're in the hospital for a
I was
reason.
on so many drugs, like zoned out. So like there's that. Good.
Wow.
Yeah.
So how long? So that was another month. So by the end of that month, you were out again?
I was out again. All they had done at that point was kind of deal with the clots. But
Okay.
the clots had created all these other problems.
Oh,
But all they did was focus on the clots. So because the clots were gone, they released me.
okay.
But for that in between month, I couldn't walk. I had to move back in with my dad because I just couldn't take care of myself.
Yeah.
Um, my phone tracks my steps, right? And
Mhm.
literally, it was a good day if I went 100 steps.
Wow.
100, like that's nothing.
That's nothing.
Yeah,
That's really nothing. I mean, that's bathroom and back a couple of times.
yeah,
That's really nothing.
exactly.
So, okay. Now from that point in time, you're at mom and dad's house, you're recovering. When did the weight loss journey begin? Like, did it already begin because you were so sick? So you're just not going to be able to eat normally, right?
Well, no, because so I ended up going into heart failure because of there's a whole lot. Like when I was in the end of life room,
Uh-huh.
because of so many blood thinners, I
Uh-huh.
ended up having internal bleeding. And so one of the things they do to monitor your internal bleeding is they pump you up with what they call contrast, so they can check you in the MRI machine and see where the blood's flowing out of. It
Wow.
it's like some sort of type of chemical. But from what I understand, like you can take 1 or 2 doses of that and be okay, but it's really hard on your kidneys. But I had to have it multiple times, and most people don't, right? They're just getting one procedure and checking it, and then that's it. But
Right.
because I had so many, my kidneys started going into failure. So, like, it was the way it was explained to me, it was like the table was wobbly, and every
Mhm.
time they moved something over here, then this, like, it was never consistent, so it was hard to figure out that first month.
So how did you keep your focus? Like we were just saying, so they don't tell you that you're in the hospice room or the end of life room in the hospital because they don't want you to give up. Because there's
Right.
still that small fraction of percentage that you could, just like yourself, begin to get a little bit better. So okay, now I mean you're talking about heart failure, you're talking about reactions from negative, effects of the blood thinners and this, that, and that. That's heavy.
Mhm.
How did you keep focused of saying, "No, we're gonna continue forward"?
At the time, my sister was pregnant with my niece, right? That was gonna be her 3rd kid. And I love my nephews, and I was excited to have a niece. And I remember, well, I wanna be here for the baby at least.
Mm.
And my goal was I wanted to be out of the hospital for the baby. And, ultimately, I wasn't. She ended up giving birth, my last week in the hospital,
Mm.
So, um, but now, like, you know, I play with my niece all the time. It's a ton of fun. But you know, that was rough, but that gave me a goal, right?
Yeah.
It was also really tough for my dad because at the same time his mom was dying. And she was in California, I'm in Idaho, and I do remember, towards the end of my time in the end of life room, he looked at me and he's like, I don't know where to be, you know?
Uh,
And I was like, well, I'm getting better. They keep saying they're gonna move me to another room.
yeah.
So I think you're good to go. Like, go be with your mom, you know?
Well, I'm chuckling because I
Yeah.
can just see that scenario. It's
Yeah.
so surreal. It almost sounds like it would be something found in a script of
Yeah,
like,
kinda, yeah.
no, fist bump, like I'm good to go. Yeah, I'm in the end of life room, but it's cool. But
Yeah.
my gosh, so that's a lot of stress.
Yeah.
That's a lot of fighting. That
Mhm.
takes a lot of fortitude just to try to get through it. At what point in time through all of this did you start to see a real upturn of saying, I got to get to the root, which I'm assuming maybe you already knew the weight was a big part of the root
Yeah.
to fix and to heal to get everything moving in a forward direction.
So after my second hospital stay, they told me that's when they were like, look, you need to lose weight. You've got about 5 years, and then after that, we can't guarantee anything. And so that was it, and that's how they left me. And you know, it's not like I went into some depression and started crying. Like, I wanted to get better. I wanted my life back. I didn't want to be in the hospital all the time. Like, especially after 2 1-month stays separated from each other, I wanted to live again.
Yeah.
And you know, I did everything you could possibly think of, like that quote that you had mentioned in the intro. You
Mhm.
know, I tried everything. I tried point systems. I tried uh, calorie restriction. You know, low carb, no carb. You name it, I tried it. You know, I tried weird stuff. Like, I even looked at what they did in the '80s, like grapefruit diet, and just anything I could come up with, right? Because I had a 5 year clock over my head,
Yeah.
and I wanted it to work. And no matter what I tried, everything kind of worked, you know, to some varying degree,
Yeah.
but they all worked for maybe 2 3 months, and then they would stagnate, and then they would stop, and then
Mhm.
I would get mad, and then because of my issues, something would happen to me physically.
Mhm.
There were points where I developed, I can never pronounce it correctly, planters fasciitis, where you
Okay.
can't really walk.
You can't
Yeah,
walk. Yeah.
yeah. So that would happen to me a lot, like those kinds of flare-ups, and so
Mhm.
I would be depressed, and what are you gonna do? You're gonna eat because 'cause you're really sad,
Yeah.
right? I had some weird thing to this day, we don't know what it was, where I couldn't move my hand for, like, weeks at a time. Like,
Mm.
it was just frozen. I don't know what it was, um, and really painful to the touch. It
Mm.
sucked, and, um, and that would happen every few months, so just something,
Yeah.
um, and so it was really rough, and, uh, and so finally I got to the point where I was like, this was maybe 3 years in.
Mhm.
Yeah, 3 years in, roughly. I was like, I need to do something because 'cause I've got 2 years left on this clock, and if I don't do something, that's it, you know? And, um, and so I looked at weight loss surgery,
Oh,
and
wow.
like, I know people who have had weight loss surgery, right? And every single one of them, they lost weight for the first year, year and a half, and ever since then, like, it's been, you know, 5, 6 years since. A couple of them, it's been decades,
Mhm.
and, every single one of them, they gained all the weight back and then some. So, like, going into it, I was very hesitant,
Mhm.
but my background is television, and 10 years of that was TV news. So, I I do my research, right? Like,
Mhm.
I look into things, and so I looked into it, and the stats on weight loss surgery are pretty bad, like, really bad. Um, there's 2 clinics in my area that do the surgery, and one clinic, boasts a 30% success rate after 5 years,
Wow.
and another clinic, boasts a 35% success rate. And it's tens of thousands of dollars to do the surgery.
Mhm.
Most insurances do not cover it at all, so it's completely out of pocket for most people.
Mhm.
And so you're gonna pay tens of thousands of dollars. You're gonna fundamentally forever change your body,
Right.
and it might not work. Chances are it's not gonna work. So do it, is basically what I was told.
Yeah.
And, but, you know, the way I saw it, well, it was for sure I was gonna be gone in 5 years, in a couple years at that point, if I didn't do this. Whereas at least with this, I would have some opportunity, some chance. And so I looked into it, and I went with the clinic that had the 35% success rate because I wanted that 5 extra percent, right?
Mhm.
I mean, you want your best chances possible.
Sure.
And one of the things that got them that 5 extra percent is they had a whole program. It wasn't just go get weight loss surgery.
Hmm.
So what ended up happening is they had me talk to a dietitian, nutritionist. I can't remember what her title was,
Hmm.
but she put me on a liquid only diet for a month. And
Oh.
it was like these meal replacement shakes. Um, the ones I had were like vegan based because that had better nutritional properties because it had more like vegetables within it and super
Mhm.
greens and stuff like that. So I figured,
Mhm.
well, if I'm not going to eat food, I need to have nutrients at least.
Mhm.
So that's the one I went with. It wasn't being vegan or anything like that. It was just that seemed the healthiest.
Mhm.
So I got that, and I was allowed to have 3 to 5 shakes a day, depending on what I felt I needed that day. And these were pretty good size, 16 to 20 ounce shakes.
Mhm.
And I did it, and I remember thinking it was surprisingly easy to do the liquid diet. Like surprisingly
It
easy.
doesn't sound
It
appetizing.
doesn't. I went into it with that reaction, thinking like, what
Yeah.
is this? And like I just thought, well, I'm gonna just collapse. Like this is gonna suck. But I also knew like, well, I didn't really have an alternative, so I did it. And then I walked in for my consultation, my checkup, and she was pretty upset. And she's like, "You should have lost 40 pounds in your first month, and you only lost 20.
Oh.
Clearly, you cheated on your diet." And I was like, "Well, I didn't. Like, I did exactly what you told me to do. Here's my
Mhm.
charts that show, like, I tracked every time I had a shake and everything." And she's like, "No, no, but that's okay." She's like, "We'll do it again. We'll go another month." And then, because I needed to lose 40 pounds total for them to say that, like, okay, you're serious about this. Now we'll schedule you for the surgery.
Okay.
Yeah, and man, I was really down about that. And I had at that point, I had been tracking on Instagram and TikTok weight loss accounts, right?
Mhm.
Because I wanted inspiration, right? I wanted motivation.
Yeah.
And so I had only followed accounts that did weight loss surgery. But the algorithm is the algorithm. And so it started showing me other weight loss accounts. And it started me showing me ones that did fasting.
Mhm.
And with my background in news, I kind of have an eye for seeing patterns.
Mhm.
So I noticed something. I noticed that the weight loss surgery accounts typically would lose a lot more weight in the beginning. Like the first 2 or 3 months, they would lose
Mhm.
significantly more weight than the fasting. But I also noticed that the fasting was more consistent. The other
Hmm.
thing I noticed was, but after a year and a half, the weight loss accounts with surgery kind of went dormant. They stopped showing off.
Mhm.
Whereas the fasting ones tended to be more consistent and still posting. Not all
Interesting.
of them, but far more of them than the other one. The last thing that really made me be like, well, I kind of need to see what's going on here is I would look at people who had weight loss surgery and lost like hundreds of pounds and
Mhm.
just had a ton of loose skin.
Mhm.
Whereas if somebody did fasting and lost hundreds of pounds, they still had loose skin, but not nearly as much as the surgery.
Wow. That is a huge deterrent. I've had a lot of friends of mine who, they've struggled with their weight.
Hmm.
Some of them have gone through, may it be the gastric sleeve surgery. Um, I'm not sure if they really just focus on the sleeve at this point in time, or before
There's a
they,
few of them.
okay.
Yeah.
And so they drop a ton of weight. And of course, it's like you said, it's liquid diet for a very, very long time. And they lose a ton of weight and then they have all this extra skin. And it's like you're chasing the carrot always, always. So you're chasing the weight loss, and then you're chasing, oh, well, maybe I need to go see a plastic surgeon to get rid of all this extra skin
Hmm.
because I could be wearing better fitting clothes, but I can't because I have this extra skin or
Hmm.
this, that, or the other, depending on if they're doing it for truly health reasons, which I know some people in my life that have done it truly for the health reasons, or if
Yeah.
you're doing it for health and vanity. Well, okay, if you're a health and vanity person, you're going to want to be able to put on that bathing suit or put
Hmm.
on a really nice dress or something. So that is huge to
Yeah.
say that the fast loss from gastric bypass weight loss surgery versus fasting, which you
Hmm.
also lost. I mean, 170 in 10 months is like
It's a person.
crazy. The main question I want to ask is how in the world did you keep your gallbladder to lose weight that fast?
Well, I I did lose my gallbladder, but that was like when I was 24. So
Okay.
yeah,
Okay.
yeah,
So now is that, you've gone through this journey, so you're way more educated than me, but neither one of us are medical
right,
practitioners.
right.
Um, is that something to really keep in mind? Let's say someone has, 150 pounds, 200 pounds to lose, and they want to do it super fast because we're about to start talking about the device that you've created,
Hmm.
which is fasting related. How do you suggest that they monitor their weight loss to make sure that you're also not losing too much too fast? Is that a concern?
So in my experience, it's a concern if there's something unhealthy happening.
Okay.
So if it's, some sort of disease or injury that's causing that weight loss, then that's where it's the concern. If it's deliberate weight loss, then honestly, the faster the better, I think,
Hmm.
in my opinion.
Okay.
I even say on the dice and on all my stuff, talk to your doctors first. Don't. I'm just some guy on the internet. Like I've had a lot of success, but talk to your medical professionals. They're the ones that know better than me. Um,
Sure.
that said, though, for myself, I was in an end of life room. I was bad. I was looking at only 5 years. I did this anyways, right?
Hmm.
To this day, all of my blood work is significantly better. And
Wow.
people will say, well, it's the meds. Well, no, I was on the meds for like 3.5 years before I started this. And my diagnosis and testing wasn't nearly the levels that it is now.
Okay.
It is the fasting.
Wow. All right. So now you've developed something called fasting dice. Can
Yeah.
you tell us what is fasting dice? And then I'm going to bounce over to your website. You do have a video. If you want to play the video, we can
Yeah,
absolutely
yeah. If you
do
want to just, yeah, play it silently while I talk over it, I guess, or whatever.
that.
Um,
I don't believe I have capability. Yes, I do. Yes, I do. All right.
yeah,
Yes,
just
I
mute
can
it.
do
Yeah. Yeah.
that. Absolutely. All right. So go ahead.
Yeah, so as I did as I started fasting, right? I looked into like how do you figure out times and whatever. So I started with 16:8. That's the typical one. But as I kept going, I constantly wanted to go with more time and change it up because it's not just the fasting, but like life happens, right? Like sometimes there's a lunch and because you're fasting, you can't do that. Or there's a dinner and because you're fasting, you can't do that. So like I wanted to be able to have options sometimes, right?
Mhm.
Not all the time because you got to make some changes, but every now and then be part of it because if the whole point is to live again, well then you want to live. So I developed these fasting dice where you constantly just roll the dice and it changes up your fasting windows and eating windows as needed.
Mhm.
You can do it daily, weekly, every few days, whatever you need, right? I've had
Mhm.
people who roll them out for a month in advance so then they can plan out their calendar and then that way they can plan like lunch hangouts with friends or dinners or whatever because they've
Mhm.
got it all booked out. Um, there's other people I know who do it every day and it's a game. And do they get a cheat day? Because the cheat's on there, because you got to have fun every now and then, right?
Mhm.
It also kind of makes it a game. Like, oh, do I get a cheat today? I don't know. We'll see. Um, the other reason that I came up with the randomness is because the whole point of fasting is to mimic ancient eating patterns,
Mhm.
right? But
Yeah.
it's not like caveman walked out of the cave and was like, "Hey, it's noon. It's lunchtime. I'm gonna go get this rabbit and I'm gonna eat." No, he had to go hunt, look out for it. He didn't know what he was going to eat. He was eating opportunistically, and if he
Mhm.
came across a fruit tree or a berry bush or something, he ate. You
Right.
know, so like there was a random element missing from fasting, so I decided to add that in. I was really surprised nobody had come up with these. So they're on my website. As you're showing, they're on Amazon.
Mhm.
Um, I'm biased. I really like them. I think they're a lot of fun. I know people who have used them really enjoy it. The gamifying element really helps. Each side is completely different. Yeah, like you're showing right there. They're
That's what I was trying to get to.
yeah,
So, okay, now the same thing with the liquid diet. When you talk about fasting,
yeah,
I think anything for us humans, and you're
mhm,
talking about adjusting the way that we eat, it's scary
mhm,
because I still think that primally we're like, okay, we're going to eat when we're hungry because we're going to go gather it. And it's the hunter gatherer mentality, right? So then somebody walking into our life of saying, oh, no, no, you're going to eat at this point in time, or you're going to only eat liquids, or you're going to do this, or you're going to do that is really flippin' scary. So when I heard about this and I started looking into fasting dice, I'm like, okay, how does it work? We want to know how it works. And now I see, even though the word fasting
mhm,
is a little like, "Oh, don't want to do it," but I can see it. Like I can see it so clearly. So I'm
mhm.
going to just read off what I see here in this picture. Let me make sure that I bring the picture up to us solo so everybody at home can see. And these are available on your website at fastingdice.com, as well as Amazon, as we brought up to the program. So you roll the dice and you have hours of fasting or a cheat. And then
Mhm,
you have a secondary die that goes with it. And on those dies, I'm going to read it out: 1 meal eating window,
mhm.
4 hour eating window, 6 hour eating window, 8 hour eating window, 10 hour eating window, 12 hour eating window.
Yeah.
So what would happen if I'm gonna roll? Oh, wow. So, okay, 24-hour fast means you are just fasting that entire day.
Yep.
Take me through a 24-hour fast because that seems like for someone who is uneducated, such as myself, to be the scariest, the complicated, because you can't just not imbibe anything for 24 hours. So what does a 24-hour fast really mean?
So let me blow your mind with something that's crazy.
Okay.
This is medically documented. I pulled up the story as you were talking because I knew we were going to get to this part of it. His name was Angus Barberry. In 1965, this 27-year-old man fasted for 1 year and 17 days.
Oh, come on.
I can
How?
send you the link to the story. It is a real story. It really happened. And so 24 hours is not so bad.
Okay.
Yeah.
But what does that mean? So, does that mean that I'm just liquid that has no calories, so just water day, or what exactly does that mean?
So what most intermittent fasting recommends, and I recommend, is during your fasting period, you cannot have any more than 50 calories and no carbohydrates.
Okay.
So if you need a little bit of almond milk in your coffee, that's okay. That's what I do, right? Even when I'm fasting,
Mhm.
I like it. I use stevia instead of sugar because that doesn't spike carbs.
Mhm.
So, and that's 0 calories. So that's okay. And I have my little, wannabe latte, and I use cold brew because I burn my tongue easy. That it's my own problem, but whatever, you know. But um, now the question I get, especially from friends and families, well, can I have a diet, soda or like a sugar free sports drink or a sugar free juice?
Yeah.
The science says yes and no. So here's what it is: whenever you have anything sweet that's chemically,
Mhm.
so those artificial sweeteners like in a soda or a sports drink or whatever, or
Mhm.
a juice, um, your body thinks it's about to eat, so it releases insulin. And insulin is either to process food or to store fat.
Mhm.
So if it doesn't have anything to go with, it's going right back to the belly. So you're kind of fighting uphill if you drink those things while you're fasting. Also, because you are convincing your body that you're about to eat, it makes it far more difficult to fast. So can you do it? Yes. Should you? It's good. It's playing on hard mode. So I don't recommend it.
Wow. I love your explanation. That is the most concise explanation, and it totally lines up with all of the theories and the articles and the research that I've done on my own. And I have a couple of loved ones that just they want their diet soda. I don't want to say any brand names. They want their
Yeah.
diet soda, and they're going to go get their diet soda, and it's like, well, what does it matter? Like, there's no calories, so I can just drink as much of this as I want. And I'm like, no, but that can't be true, because when I started working in corporate, I did the same thing. And I'm thinking, well, I'm getting a little bit of the caffeine, but it's just a kind of a more gentle caffeine. There's not a ton of it, but there is some. And I started gaining weight. And I'm like, what in the world is this? Because all I'm drinking is that. Like, I'm not really even eating. I'm just drinking that. But I'm sitting at my desk and I'm working and I'm gaining weight. Like, what in the world is this? And that's when I found, so similarly to what you said, but you're so much more concise in compacting the research of artificial sweeteners will release insulin because the body thinks it's about to eat. Oh my gosh, that is huge. What can you say to someone who is arguing with you against the research in trying to convince them that that really is what's happening?
Well, so that actually happened to me maybe 2 weeks ago with a family friend. And I said, well, here's the thing. You've been drinking those and have tried to lose weight your entire life. I've given them up and I've been fasting and I've lost 170 pounds in 10 months. That's it.
That's it. Like, conversation over, right?
Right.
Yeah. That's and I wish that there was more information from mainstream information from the doctors and endocrinologists. I mean, diabetics have to know that. Like, they have to buy into that belief. Because otherwise, what are you doing? Just propagating the problem? And it just continues to go over and over and over. So, talking about propagating a problem and consistency, is it easy to stay consistent with fasting diets? And if so, why is it easy?
I have found for myself it has been very easy. A couple reasons. One, I mean, I do have a ticking clock over my head, so that's kind of motivation. Most people don't have that, but that clock already has been pushed back decades already, so I don't have the clock over. But I'm seeing the benefits of everything I'm doing, and I went through everything for years, right? Because before COVID, I had my own issues and being locked down, right? So like for me, this whole situation has been a lot longer. So I don't want to go back.
Yeah.
I don't want that again.
Yeah.
So it's a lot easier for me to make the choice of, well, do I want those chicken nuggets or not? Because that's one of my vice foods. I love me some nuggets, and every now and then, yeah, of course, you got to, right? But not all the time. And part of what the fasting dice does, that I've seen in myself, is because I roll mine daily and change it up. It gives me little goals every day to hit, right? So after a month, like maybe I don't lose so much weight that first couple weeks, right? Because I'm processing and maybe I'm lifting weights, so like my muscle mass is growing, but the fat is burning, but the scale doesn't show so much. But because I'm hitting my daily goals of fasting and rolling, I'm building up confidence in my method. And because of that, it's easier to stick to that long term. Also for me, it's just, like I was saying, I've got a lot going on, so that's part of my motivation. But with other people, I am seeing that it builds that for them.
Sure.
Plus, it's a game. Like, it makes it a game, which, apps nowadays are designed to be a game so that you're addicted to them. So that helps too.
Have you heard from any clients to where they're doing it almost as a family? I guess this isn't something necessarily that you want to do with children, but
no, I wouldn't recommend it for children.
Yeah. So, anybody where, maybe it's an all adult family, 16 and above, something like that, I can assume would be safe.
Yeah.
Have you heard from any clients to where they're doing it together as a couple or they're doing it together as a family?
So the dice are very, very new. Like they've only been
Okay.
out maybe like 2, 3 months.
Okay.
But I do have a few married couples who have been trying it.
Mhm.
And I have of the ones that still check in with me regularly, because it's like anything. Some people will fall away. The dice in themselves are not magic. You have to want it, and you have to want to go for it. That's why I do those videos about the mindset too. You can have the right way, but it's like that expression, right? You can lead the horse to water, but you can't make him drink.
Sure.
Um, yeah.
Yeah.
But the ones that check in are seeing success, feeling better, not just
Mhm.
losing weight, but legitimately just feeling better.
Mhm.
I had an aunt of mine who had my whole life has had arthritis issues in her
Mhm.
hands and in her legs, and she
Mhm.
started fasting. And within like a couple weeks, it almost all went away, and she
Wow.
greatly reduced her arthritis medications, and
Mhm.
she lost a pretty good amount of weight. She didn't have like a ton to lose, but wanted to lose a few pounds, and lost quite a bit. And it hasn't come back like it typically does with the diet. And that's been another benefit of it.
That's huge. So I want to ask you a question because
Yeah.
you said that dirty word that I try to keep out of my household, out of my mind, which is diet. I
Yeah.
believe, in everything I'm listening from you, I would assume, and I'm only assuming here, that we're under the
Mhm.
same impression that diets don't work. Do you agree with that?
Oh, yeah, 100%.
And why?
So there's a book by Dr. Jason Fong. It's called The Obesity Code.
Mhm.
But it's not just him. There's other research that kind of proves this. But that book is probably the best for laymen's to read and kind of understand what I'm about to say. But in that book, he explains the thing about diets is they work for a little bit, that 2 to 3 months, because what's going on is your metabolism is at a certain rate, right? So when you drop the caloric intake, it's going to make you lose weight, at least in the beginning. But the body is adaptive.
Mhm.
So as it goes and it slows down, the metabolism is actually dropping to match the new caloric intake. So when it meets up, now you're at the flat line and you're plateauing or even regressing because you're frustrated.
Wow.
So so that's what happens. So what do most people do when that happens? Well, then they get really mad and they eat out of frustration, right? Into
Sure.
depression. So when
Mhm.
they do that, what have they done? Well, they have increased their caloric intake with a lower metabolism. So no wonder it comes back quick. And no wonder it comes back with a vengeance
Mhm. Mhm.
because you've lowered it.
Wow. So,
Yeah.
but with okay. All right. So that answers the diets and why the diets don't work. And my gosh. Okay. So I'm bringing up the book to the broadcast because I always like to bring up
Yeah.
the visual of the cover of the book. It's called The Obesity Code, is what
Mhm.
we were just talking about, based
Yeah.
upon the question of why don't diets don't work.
Mhm.
Now, let's go back to fasting for just a moment because my brain
Yeah.
just popped back over there.
Yeah.
Within fasting, we're always talking about consistency and making sure that you're consistent, you're sticking with it.
Mhm.
Um, However, the fasting method you've created is fairly random. What would I feel? So, for instance, let me bring up the fasting dice to the broadcast again.
Yeah.
So, for instance, if I draw these two cubes right here,
Mhm.
and one is going to say a 16-hour fast, and the other, let's say, says, what could it was it eight
Like an
hours?
8-hour eating window. That's
8 hour
typical.
eating window.
Yeah.
Okay, so let's say I draw those two.
Yeah.
What is my body going to feel like if then tomorrow's a 24-hour fast and then the day after, maybe I get to eat much, much more. And
Mhm.
I'm assuming this is almost feeling like this is going to be more to what you said earlier in the broadcast of the primal nature of hunting and
Mhm.
gathering, to where we must have had to go through days, a week of no eating, and you're just sourcing water from streams because, that's where we came from, right?
You're chasing down the deer and you gotta go find it.
Exactly. So, what is the method that makes this work so much for how we're built? Have you done the research on that to know that?
So I haven't done like a clinical research. I really want to, but they're very expensive and I'm just a guy in Idaho. But you know, but I would love to do that. But the whole theory behind this was my grandpa was a bodybuilder in Mexico in the 50s.
Mhm.
And one of the things he taught me, and a lot of bodybuilders talk about this, is what they call body confusion, right?
Yeah.
You can't do the same exercises in the gym constantly because your body will adapt and then it's not as effective. My thought going in was it's the same thing with fasting. Your body's going to get used to your windows and you've got to change it up. It's the only way it works.
Mhm.
So that's what I've noticed. I've noticed very minimal plateaus, maybe a plateau maybe lasting a few days. But then other than that, it just keeps going and just keeps going. And it's great.
So you're constantly breaking those barriers, just like muscle
Yeah.
confusion. You're constantly, in muscle confusion, you're going to tear down more muscles. And that's the point. That's the point of weightlifting. That's the point of doing what you're doing, because that's how you get stronger, because the muscles rebuild. So you break them down and they rebuild. When you're young, then, you break one muscle down, it's going to grow twice as big. When you get
Right.
older, you break one muscle down and eventually you'll get to where it'll rebuild it by half. And so on and so forth. So you have to work harder and longer as you get older if you can. That makes so much sense. So much sense. And I'm glad that you answered that question, because let's go back to what we were just saying, based upon this book right here, the Obesity Code and why diets don't work. So you're confusing it for like a moment, and then it gets used to what you're doing. And then you're confusing it for another slight moment because you go back to what you were doing before. And then it's like, oh, okay, we're eating cake and bonbons now. All right, let's pack it on, pack it on, pack it on.
Well, and there's more to it than just that, right? So not only are you kind of killing your metabolism, but your body burns one of two sources of fuel, either glucose or ketones, right? Ketones being fat.
Mm-hmm.
So if on a typical diet, just low calorie, healthy diet, you're going to still have some carbohydrates. You're still going to have some sort of source of glucose. So your body never knows to make the switch to burn into fat. It's starving, waiting for the next round of any sort of glucose to come in.
Yeah.
That's why your metabolism drops. Whereas with fasting, it doesn't do that, because the body eventually goes, well, I guess we're burning the stored fat because we still got to run. So like I'll do fast for days at a time because I'm at that point for myself. Right. And it's easy for me, and it weirds people out when I'm like, yeah, I'm not going to eat for like 4 or 5 days.
Yeah.
And people will look at me like I'm crazy. And I get it. Like a year ago, I would have looked at myself the exact same way, and now I don't.
Right.
But it's because my body, even though I'm not taking in food, it's eating the fat. So, which is the goal, right?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, this is so powerful. I'm so glad that you're on here telling us about this, because it really connects the dots. It puts it together. And especially the point that you made just a few moments ago about, diet drinks. How, yes, okay, so there's no technical sugar, but it's the artificial sweeteners. And your body's like, oh, we're about to eat. So it releases insulin and you wind up gaining weight by drinking or eating the artificially sweetened foods, because your body's like, oh, we're gonna eat, we're gonna eat, we're gonna eat, and
your
then
body doesn't know. It's like, what is this, an apple? Is this strawberries? What's going on here?
Yeah,
it doesn't know.
So then all the insulin that was released is then stored as fat, and that is huge. I have been sort of like on that, parade for years of going, it's not gonna work, it's not gonna work. Please don't do it. Just put it down. How about water? Water tastes so good, And I love that you made that point. I'm really truly excited. Now, fasting dice, you told me that this company and this device is fairly new. Can you take us through the process of how long did it take you to patent it and bring it to market?
Yeah, so it's patent pending right now. It didn't take very long to do that, because it was a pretty easy concept to write up. Most patents, you have to do the technical design of what it is, and they're dice. We've had dice for literally tens of thousands of years as societies. Right? So yeah. And as you can see behind me, I'm a giant dork. So I love kind of board games and stuff like that. So for me, that's kind of where that came from. I wanted to have a fun way to do it. Yeah. Show off the dorkness. Awesome.
Yep. I thought you pointed it out. We might have.
Yeah, for sure. For sure. Oh yeah. It's my own fault. But Yeah, so I wanted to make it fun. I wanted to make it different. I wanted to make it interesting. I also wanted to make it more like, if I'm gonna fast and it's supposed to mimic these patterns, I kind of want to do it the right way
Yeah.
in what I thought.
Hmm.
And so I came up with this, and it's helped me, and it makes it interesting, and yeah.
Well, I love that. I really find it very creative. And you've kept it, like you said, we've had dice for how many years? I mean,
Right.
forever and ever. So everybody knows what dice is. Like you shake them, you roll them, and you look at the outcome. And I just love how simplistic that is. And then you tied into what you need to do into the simplicity to really get your metabolism working and lose this weight. And as we had mentioned in the beginning of the program, so you lost 170 pounds in 10 months after doing research and actually going through some pre-surgery requirements of liquid diets for weight loss surgery, and decided, you know
Hmm.
what, 34% success rate of weight loss surgery, just it wasn't going to cut it. Like you really
Right.
need to do something, because unfortunately in your situation you have some heart disease, heart conditions
Hmm.
that you were at 5 years. You know, you were mid 30s, and the doctors are telling you, listen, if you keep the weight on, you got no more than 5 years. So the clock is
Well,
hard.
and it's not just the heart condition. It's the weight, it's the heart condition, it's the blood clots. Like,
Yeah.
I had just this whole deck stacked against me.
Right.
So like I needed to do something.
Right. Truly, truly.
Yeah.
And within your journey, you are now doing some speaking engagements as well.
Hmm.
Can you
Yeah.
tell me a little bit about where are you speaking? Is this something for the general audience that everybody could find?
Not yet.
Okay.
I'm working on that now to speak in more general public type places. But because of my success, because of how well it's going, my cardiologist has had me speak to a couple different gatherings with other cardiologists, because the sad reality is obesity and being overweight is very common with heart disease and heart issues, and it's significantly harder for those group of patients to lose weight.
Mm,
There's a lot of different reasons as to why. One of the main ones is their hearts are bad, so it's hard to go work out.
yeah.
You know,
Yeah.
so it's just it's tough. So, but you don't need a gym bag to fast.
Mhm. Mhm.
And I've actually thought about making a kind of joke video about meal prepping for fasting, and just like it's just me lying on the couch falling asleep. you know.
Well, yeah, if you had 24-hour fast, there's nothing to
Yeah,
do.
nothing to do. Yeah, yeah.
Now, what about the exercise portion of it? And,
Mhm,
I was blown away. I have to tell you, I really didn't have a lot of nutritional background in growing up and understanding how the things that we put into our body, how the body is going to run. How is
mhm,
that engine going to run on certain fuels? And when I entered into my gym journey years ago, I was completely blown away that so much of our fitness comes from what we put into our mouths and into our body. But so what is it? I think I'm a little off in the percentages. It's something like 70% of what you eat and 40% exercise, or maybe it's even a little bit more. Actually, that's not right. 70-30, right?
yeah,
So
70/30. Yeah,
70-30. So 30% is your exercise and how much you actually get up off of your bottom and go do something. Is
yeah.
that accurate?
Um, Not really.
Okay.
That's a sad thing. It's not like there's that, what is it, that phrase, you can't outwork a bad diet.
Okay.
Well, yeah, because it's true. Like, you eat one donut, what is that, like 800 calories? I don't even know,
Something
but
like
it's
that.
a lot. It's a
Yeah.
lot, and like you would have to run. I think it's like 3 miles, 4 miles, something like that,
Mhm.
just
Mhm.
to burn off that one donut.
Mhm.
But that's not the only thing you're gonna eat that day.
Mhm.
So then you're just fighting uphill. So like it really does matter. Like, okay, so even with fasting, I've had a lot of success with fasting, right?
Mhm.
But if somebody wants to be critical and point out, make point holes at it, you know who else does fasting regularly?
Mm-mm.
Sumo wrestlers,
Do they really?
almost daily.
I would have never thought, because they're
I
just the
know most
big
people don't
guys.
think that. Yeah, most people don't think that. So what you put into your body really matters. Also, how you go about it. right? So what sumo does, most sumo dojos, they don't have breakfast. They generally have a late, like lunch brunch, basically. Like they eat
Mhm.
around 11. Like they'll have a workout, they'll eat around 11. But the thing that kind of trips them up is right after that brunch, they immediately take a nap. That's what they're supposed to do. That's what gains the bulk.
Oh.
So that's what they do. Then they have another workout. So they work out typically 2 times a day and fast. So you would think they'd be rail thin, but because they take those naps, that's what does it. So even with fasting, you shouldn't eat 2 to 3 hours before bed.
Oh my gosh, you connected another dot there because so that 2 hour, 2 o'clock, 3 o'clock tiredness.
Mm-hmm.
People eat lunch and then we all want to take a nap at 2, 3 p.m. Oh my gosh. That's amazing. I did not realize that they ate and then they took a nap and that's where the hiccup is.
Yeah.
So how do we bust through to keep our energy?
Well, for them, it's optimization, right? Because they're trying to grow. But yeah, for everyone else, it's a hiccup, right?
True.
Yeah.
So, all right, let me just get just your personal remedy. Do you engage like does that happen for you when you're doing the fasting dice lifestyle? Like do you feel that way where you're going to get to early afternoon and just be totally conked out or not at all because you're eating in a different way?
Uh, so I will go days at a time without eating with my fasting, and
Okay.
I do not have that issue whatsoever.
Wow.
Um, I don't get tired. Oddly enough, I've even reduced the amount of coffee I drink
Okay.
because I just don't need it. I get too jittery. Like I used to go from drinking, I don't know, like a 32-ounce homemade latte that I would make with my coffee and almond and stevia to
Mhm.
literally I can only handle about 12 ounces now, if that. I just don't need it, you know?
It's
Um,
amazing how we can just optimize our bodies to do
mhm,
exactly what we need it to do and to feel great and have tons of energy if we're just doing the right things. And there are
mhm,
so many kind of sloppy processes out there that I love what you've created. I love what you've shared about fasting dice. And
mhm.
congratulations on your
Thank you.
success. So
Yeah.
tell us before we end the broadcast here, what are your goals? Because when we connected in the green room, you had mentioned, I was saying, oh my gosh, Daniel, 170 pounds in 10 months. And you said, well, I'm not done yet.
Yeah.
So what are your goals?
Oh man. I mean, I still got a lot more to go. Maybe like at least another 100 pounds, maybe a little bit more. But like I'm not very tall, right?
Okay.
I'm like 5'4". So like a healthy weight for me, according to the charts, is like 130 to 150.
Ooh.
Yeah,
Ooh.
that's what they say. Yeah, I'd be pocket size.
Yeah, that seems very, very thin for a male.
That's what I think too, but that's what the charts say.
Okay.
So I probably won't get to that level, honestly. I like lifting weights too much, so I just don't think that's what's going to work out.
Yeah.
So what magic number? I don't know, but I do want to get lower.
Okay.
When I started this, I was over 460. Have since lost 170, 175 as a couple days ago, but now I'm into the 11th month, so
Wow.
still going, and we'll keep going, and we'll see what happens. Um, when I started, I was a size 54 pants. I'm now a
Mhm.
size 38 or 40, depending on the cut.
That's great.
Yeah, in less than a year. So like,
That's
yeah.
great. You have to feel so much better.
Oh, tons.
How do you feel?
To say how I feel, I have to tell you how bad I was,
Okay.
right? I have to explain just how bad I was. When I first got out of the hospital and I could only walk 100 steps in a day, that's not in a row, in a day, that would wipe me out all day. I would be so exhausted from that. Now I'm at the point that I can work out for about 2 hours and feel fine and then still go do stuff. Like I'm not exhausted that I need to go lay down.
Mhm.
Um, I do get tired every now and then, but like I'm still on my meds, but now finally the doctors are starting to talk about like, well, if you keep losing weight, maybe we can talk about getting you off some of these meds.
Right.
Whereas they never talked about that before. So, and then 3 of the meds I'm on, side effects are extreme exhaustion. So like I'm fighting an uphill battle to stay awake all the time. I was like, say, well, I'm 40, so there's that. But
Yeah.
yeah. But no, I feel really good. I can do things again. Like
Has your
I
plantar fasciitis flared up again? As you were mentioning, you suffered with that earlier and you weren't able to really walk because plantar fasciitis is very, very painful
yeah.
on the feet.
So when I first started this, maybe within the first 2 months, I had another episode of it.
Okay.
So that was 11 months ago, 9 months ago now at this point.
Mhm.
And that was the turning point for me because before I would get depressed and I would eat and be sad. But what I told myself at that point was like, well, you're getting success from the fasting, and this is going to go away.
Yeah.
And you could try to comfort and soothe yourself with pizza or junk food or whatever, or just eating, period, even if it's healthy, just eating.
Mhm.
Or you can keep going down the path and hopefully this goes away long term.
Right.
And so I kept with it. And I had that flare up for about a week and it sucked and it was miserable because I was in pain and I was hungry, right?
Right.
But I did it. But then it stopped and it hasn't been back.
Ugh. I
Yeah.
guess, and everybody says this, especially to me, anybody who follows the show knows that I do struggle with arthritis. And so,
Mm.
of course, it's inflammation. Like so many of our diseases, it's all
Right.
inflammation rooted. And the foods that you can eat to ward off inflammation, the things that are going to optimize our system. Do you think that possibly in the future you will have any type of nutrition books or any books that you're going to be writing? Or I know you have a podcast,
Yeah.
and,
Yeah.
and I do want to
The
spotlight
the YouTube
podcasts.
videos. Yeah.
Okay,
Yeah.
so tell us
Um,
a little bit about that.
yeah. So I make YouTube's videos fairly regularly, maybe twice a month. Pretty in depth, talking about all sorts of different topics. Sometimes I'll get into the science. Sometimes I'll get into like just the emotional side because I've been there, right? Literally in an end of life room. Like I get it. I've been frustrated trying everything. So like I've done it. I've tried it. Like I can talk about it. And like I remember being on a diet at 7, right? My
Wow.
grandpa being a former bodybuilder in Mexico. One of the things he talked about that he would have me do when I was young is wear a trash bag under my shirt as I worked out because it would make you sweat more to lose
Yep.
weight. Because that's what he would do, right? Because he had to get cut for the competitions.
Yeah.
So like it's old school and it's not good for you, but I'm 7. He's my grandpa. I'm gonna do what he says. So like I've been there. I've done it. Right. It
Right.
sucks. And so yes, I do want to write a book. I've had a few people tell me I should write a book. I don't know about nutrition or whatever, but something.
Mhm.
Yeah.
Mhm. And so you were interviewed on their podcast, and that was on the
Yeah.
Daily K. And
Yeah.
I have found that on fastingdice.com. You have many
Mhm.
different resources. And as you were mentioning, you produce the YouTube videos and I just think somebody with your journey in your fasting, I'd love to know like the in-depth, like I want the fly on the wall story. What is Daniel eating today? Because that is magnanimous success when you
Yeah.
tell somebody and you're entering into your 11th month at 175 pounds down
Yeah.
from, they're telling you have 5 years, man. Like that's it if you get
Yeah.
that. Jeez, and you're
Yeah.
in, the dying room in the hospital, and oh my gosh, your
Yeah.
story, you have clawed your way back.
Yeah.
I wanna really thank you for sharing your story and continue on, and I hope that you will be able to come back onto the show when you have more and more added into this journey because it's just going like it is rocketing to the moon at this point. And the
Yeah.
fasting dice are really cool. So everybody go check out fastingdice.com. They're available on Amazon. Are they available anywhere else?
On the website, I think Google Shopping has got them as well.
Okay.
I think eBay maybe has like an eBay store. I don't know.
Okay.
I use Shopify and it distributes out to a bunch of different things. So,
Okay.
um, Yeah.
What about if somebody wants to follow you, or maybe they've watched the show and they're like, you know what, I really want to talk to him. Can
Yeah.
anybody contact you, and what's the best contact?
So if you go to fastingdice.com, it's got all my social media. I run it all, so you'll directly reach to me. There's even there's a little pop-up that comes up, I think within 30 seconds of being on the website, and it'll give you access to a free guide that I created that talks about the emotional aspects of weight loss, like
Mm,
things that I did to help me kind of get over it. Like, I'll give you one example that's in the guide. Um, they'll say write down your goals, right? But the next step that I did was I wrote down my goals. Then I wrote down what I think I'm going to feel like when I reach those goals.
mm.
And then I wrote why I feel that I am worthy of reaching those goals. Because I really do believe self-sabotage is real. And so you have to give yourself the permission to succeed.
I love that mind, body, and soul connection.
Hmm.
And you put all three together there. Wow. I love
Yeah.
that. And so that is available on your website, fastingdice.com.
Yeah. You just put in your email address, you'll get the guide. And even if you don't get the dice, at least that helps you and gives you a jumping off point.
And do we pay for that? Is that
That's
free?
free.
Wow. Oh, that's a
Yeah.
huge gift. Well, thank you so much, Daniel.
Yeah.
That is amazing. You're helping a lot of people be able to crawl their way and claw their way back to health and sustainability of being around for
Yeah.
yourself and for your family and for everybody around you, or loves and cares for you, wants you here and healthy. And
Yeah.
I'm so excited that you're in this journey and you found something that has a success rate, right?
Yeah, I mean, I'm doing it. Yeah, the success rate has been huge. I mean, they haven't done like number studies yet about like how effective, but it's very effective clearly. And I'm excited. Everyone I know that's tried it has seen benefits and excited about fasting. So
Awesome. Awesome, Daniel. Well, thank you so much for donating your time and giving me just a moment with you. I hope that you have a wonderful day, and really,
yeah,
truly,
you
I
too.
love this connection. We are now friends. You're a friend of the
Yeah,
show. Just
thank you.
email us. I'd love to have you on again.
Yeah, sounds great.
Awesome. Take care, Daniel.
You too. Bye.
Bye. Oh my gosh, everybody. All right. Well, up next is going to be the news. We're going to be talking about, what has been happening this past week financially, and getting a little bit of a financial education with VistaFront Partners, as well as some good news. I found some really, really great news articles that in my own way I'm going to retell and be able to share some pictures and inspire you. And we've got some birthdays and an anniversary. So stay tuned. Join us. Up next is going to be the news and financial report with Elizabeth Cooper and VistaFront Partners. And as always, we are blessed. You are blessed.